Oh, 1 second, guys. There you go. You guys won't notice anything about that, but because it's not on your channel. These VODs are on a VOD channel, if you guys are curious. So when they get exported, they won't actually hear any of this music, and you probably think I'm insane. But welcome into if anyone's here. I doubt it, and I gave no warning whatsoever to the stream. I don't expect any of you guys to be here unless you're Cashmere, which I doubt even. But Insomnia Game, where you at? All right, let's give me a second, chat. Give me a second. This is a very impromptu, but and probably not healthy for me, but it's been something that I kind of just said, probably be better what I'm gonna do anyways, you know. One second, chat. Let me close my door. Yeah. I don't wake up my own family. Oh, you know. The one who does like being up at 2:20 in the morning here in the U.S. Can make up some math time zones was, but yeah, time zones. Am I right? Right? Or am I wrong? I'm right. I'm right. Here's why I'm here. Just for the record, spot. If something I will upload this, though, it was probably the longer because somehow I can actually do it. So I might cut it up. I don't know. But today is a very interesting stream. Unhealthy, unconventional, impromptu. All these are true and more. Today's stream will be just me streaming to the Nintendo Direct, which is as of now in about 6 hours or so, or at least 6 hours till I'm going to prepare for it. So the deal today is I'm not probably going to react to the Direct myself on stream. There's a chance I might, depending, but I doubt it's going to be that. You know, I doubt if I know my audience, they're probably going to be coming for someone else as well. So what my plan is right now, at least right now, I might do some mixed things. Is I'm gonna raid someone named Beta 64, who you might have known and all that at the end of the stream. This is not because I want to raid him. This is just because I usually will. I'm probably planning on watching with him the Direct. And if you don't know who Beta 64 is, here, let me just do this little command for you called project. This is my main game development project. The main thing most people here will know me for, it's for Dreams. A fan game, all that, you know. Beta 64 is one of the people this fan gets for. So to make matters short, we're going to probably raid him at the end of the stream, which is roughly a little bit like 30 minutes or an hour before the Direct starts. There's a chance, depending on how many people watch, I might watch it myself, stream it, react. But I don't really expect myself to be that enjoyable, I guess, to watch. And this is more of a way for those people who are interested, like me, who want to stay up till the Direct, or if time zones line up that way. So if you're into that, come on by. Discuss your hopes and dreams, and admit if you want, if you're gonna be crushed, just like me. Before I even start, Tamagotchi Life Remake 2. Give me a new Tamagotchi life. That's my only hopes and dream here. My bar's pretty minimum though. Like I usually come into these directs. Just happy that there is one, you know, experience. My philosophy is probably not in 1% though, right? But yeah, this stream is meant to be like a countdown, but with actual commentary and someone to watch with. Yippee! So over here, welcome in. I didn't know, but this is the first time I'm playing F-Zero 99 in a long time. If you're curious, F-Zero 99 apparently has private lobbies for the last 4 months. I did not know that. So, it's pretty fun. Yeah. So, let me just turn that off down. I think you guys can hear that right. If you guys can't, let me know. We'll adjust it as we need it. Let me turn it down on my end. But yeah, if you guys are curious, come on by. We're just kind of hanging. And I'll be civil. All that. This is a very unconventional stream, as I said. and hopefully it will go long. But I don't usually have I haven't had a schedule recently, and that's kind of my fault. I usually don't stream that long. That's usually it's just very chill, lax, casual as the text say, dualment and random variety stuff here. Admittedly, but I'm hoping to be chill and have a longer stream to see how things go. I have no idea what's gonna go. And likely it's gonna be as things go. There's no plan and there's not stuff. Like literally, like I said, the plan right now is loosely just getting to the thing, getting to the actual direct, and it's I'm gonna watch it, but I don't know if I'm gonna actually react. There might be a chance I might just do both, where I have it in the background chatting with some people in this. It's very Americans. I kind of just joking in another stream earlier. I ain't got that. I have insomnia, so yippee, right? I was joking, like, I might as well just stay up until after the direct and then hit the hay. I've done that, for better or worse, it's like... So yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. It's more likely I'm just gonna stay up, and why not stream it with you guys, right? Like, document it for the world to see it. I'm not like, it's like my sleep is terrible. Like, I usually feel, so here's the deal, guys. I usually feel tired, and then all of a sudden, like, I want to go to bed, I prepare for bed, and as soon as I lay in bed, I wake up again. I usually get up out of bed. So, usually I would be in bed right now, finally getting myself to go to sleep around, like, by 3. I usually try going to bed by midnight, so that's the tip. So I usually feel tired, and then I go to bed at midnight, and then I realize, I can't sleep. I want to do something. And then this happens. And except the stream. I don't stream. So, it just so happens that Nintendo Direct is this morning, or evening if you're, in relevant time to Japan. It's like... it's like... Might as well, It's not like I have anything going on tomorrow except the Direct. I'm probably gonna sleep... Sure, do what I would have done usually, and sometimes I do this, it's not good. I usually stay up until around, I stay up till the direct, I watch it. Depending if I'm streaming or not, I discuss it. And, probably gonna hit the hay as soon as that does that. And, yeah. As a heads up too, we have a couple new emotes, though no one here subbed, and I don't really care if people sub here. I don't, like, if you want emotes, if you want perks, go ahead, but, preferably, I understand completely if you don't. But, there's a couple of emotes, mainly for my own, for my own use, because I get a free permanent tier 3, right? Because like here, it says that, there's some really alerts, really rare alerts you guys probably no one has seen yet, because no one has subbed yet. It's like been only like 2 subs at the very start of when I got affiliate. And I could have got affiliate a lot sooner, but like I said, I don't really stream that. I try. I could, but I don't do this. I do this for the passion for the art as a certain thing. Yeah. So, yippee, right? I love how many fake viewers are in here. Yeah, there's like Commander Rue and all that. Yeah, there's so many of you fake viewers in here. Part of me wonders what they do, because I know that there's like the whole thing with Commander Rue and all that, where like there's like they do research. But the fact is, they're not really able to do much research when you're the only I'm the only one here. Give or take. I just think it's so funny. But yeah, yeah. Hold on, let me check my if anyone has spelling issues, let me. Test, test. Crap. I just butchered my life! Yippee! Hold on, chat. My hopes for the Switch 2. Well, as you know, I don't know if you're aware, but the Direct does not have the Switch 2. But, I personally hope, that the Switch 2 has some kind of upscale with 4K or 1440p. Realistically, I doubt it wouldn't be needed, right? I don't think. But I do think, it will. I'm back, okay. I do think, it will have the, have some kind of upscale. Like, it will, apparently it will be powerful enough to kind of upscale. So I do think at least it will try upscaling to 4K, even if it's not pure AI. We can do upscaling without AI, technically, if you think about it. That's how the Xbox, Series, Xbox One X and PS4 Pro did it, I believe. It was not AI, they just had their own kind of thing. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's what my main hope is, this upscaled and better graphics, you know, better power. You know, and this isn't really something Nintendo needs, because they always optimize for their first, you know, its only target is the Switch. But I personally do think having better hardware is just better for everyone. As long as we can keep under the margin, but let's be honest, it's probably gonna be, it's probably, the price, it doesn't matter if you're a Nintendo fan, right? Once it's under like the, that's what I was thinking. Welcome in, Coops, by the way. I hope you don't mind me calling you that. But yeah, I think the Switch was pretty close to the PS3 Xbox 360 era. I think it's like PS4. I'll be honest. I'm thinking it's gonna be PS4 where it's gonna lack in some other departments because it's not like a 1-to-1. It's not Sony. It's not a PS4, right? But I think it's gonna be able to handle PS4 games better than the PS4. Like it's gonna be like PS4 Pro graphics. But it's going to have other things that will push it to modern standards. Like I have no idea about AI, but I do think Nintendo has some kind of thing with that, right? I have no idea. Obviously. I do think they know what they're doing, though. At least hopefully they do after learning what they get from the Switch 1, and then, you know, they went from the Wii U to the Switch, and then hopefully they won't go back to the Wii U again, you know? It's like, what are we? The Wii U 2, guys? Is the Switch 2 the Wii U 2? I'm joking, but yeah. I'm thinking, I mean, I don't know if there's gonna be an OLED model perchance, but I think there's gonna be a, you know, like a budget version if they're gonna, if it's the price is high, right? Maybe there's like a one with a higher storage. If it's OLED though, I would buy that, yeah. Like I have a Switch OLED, that's what I'm using, but I have my Switch OLED, right? But I mean, I'll be honest, I usually use TV mode, right? I love being handout, because it's like, you know, it's like the Switch, right? There's a lot of games I do use OLED for, but I'll be honest, most of the time, especially when I'm streaming like this, I'm just TV. Though, it would be cool if somehow Nintendo added like a functionality where you could stream this to a TV from the handout, so the Switch could be like it's like streamers could stream it without putting it into a TV. So I don't really think they would go that far, you know? It's like, well, that would be a cool thing, personally. Yeah, no, I think they should keep the hybrid nature, for sure. I do think they need to do that, because that's kind of the point of the Switch, right? It's, you dock in and not. They could find a way to probably, you know, make it still work. Right, they could clearly keep backwards compatibility and get rid of the Switch kind of gimmick, but I don't think many people, it's literally they're going to hurt themselves in the foot by doing that, I think. they could improve upon the Switch without getting rid of it, I guess is what I'm saying. They could even change the Switch gimmick without getting rid of it. Like, I was, the Switch rumors have been around, right? And, there's not going to be tomorrow, but I had this interesting idea. I was just talking about it a while back. But, I was just talking to someone, and someone mentioned it. Where, you know how the Wii U gamepad and the Switch, the gamepad is like, simulate, Someone had an idea, we were just talking. Allow the person to stream, to wirelessly connect the Switch to the TV without, like, the dock. This wouldn't happen realistically, but just having an ability to stream it without, streaming to a TV without a dock would really, make the Switch thing interesting. Then you could also have it where you could have both streams at the once, like the Wii U, right? I doubt that would happen. I could see that happening when you're, like, in the same place. Like, if you're near a TV, you can actually connect it. I do remember. That's what I'm saying, is I think it's possible, but, I don't know if they would do it. It's Nintendo, right? It's kind of unexpected, right? I know Metroid Prime 4 is more likely than the Switch 2. Because Nintendo specifically mentioned it won't come today. Like, they won't. Like, maybe they'll shadow drop it at the end. That'd be really interesting if they lied them to it. Like, they pretty much just lied and then they're gonna do it. But Metroid Prime 4, right? I could see happening today. But if that happens today, I'm pretty sure that would mean it would either be. I don't think it's gonna be just a Switch 1 title. I think they're gonna optimize for Switch 2 and make it like a cross-gen thing. I absolutely want backwards compatibility, so even if it was a Switch 1, if that was the case, you could still play it on Switch 2, but I can't see them just releasing it beforehand without acknowledging how it could run so well on the Switch 2. It's like Breath of the Wild, where they're probably designing it for the next system in mind. I'm just, it's curious. It's Metroid Prime 4 is a curious entity for a game. I never really was around for Metroid and, like, the GameCube Prime stuff. Though, I do like the idea of Metroid. I never kicked into, like, Metroid Dread. And I never had enough time to really Metroid Prime in general. I grew up with the late Wii, late GameCube and Wii era. I'm a Wii and DS head. Or Wii and DS, I grew up with those systems. So, I kind of grew up after Metroid. Really, the relevancy of it. Because, it's like F-Zero and stuff too. Where, like, I love the ideas of them. And I know them because I'm into, retro games and stuff. It's just, I don't know enough of it in the, prime time because, I never played a full game of it, But I really do, I'm interested in it for sure. Like I'm interested in these directs a lot because it's like, I'm glad if someone gets a dead IP back from the dead, like Metroid Prime 4, right? Like, we got Metroid Prime and then Dread, but those aren't like the main games, they're not new games. It's like this, we need, even 99's a new game, right? It's like a remake at least. But I think Prime, the first Prime it's just the same game in my opinion. I don't really know if that's just, no, I don't think that's how accurate, but that's just me. It didn't look that, it didn't have anything new to it, I guess. So, I also like Thousand Year Door a lot on the remake, so that might be my fault there. But admittedly, yeah, I'm really interested in it. But usually nowadays, I look into these directs just because it's like almost like culturally. Like I go into these directs expecting nothing, asking for Nintendo to prove, show me something and prove me wrong that I want, I have my expectations, hopes, and dreams, but I'd be honest, you can't go in there hoping for something and then be shocked when you don't see anything. You know, it's like I might not see anything that I'm gonna buy, because I'm obviously it's been harder for me to actually justify buying something. Because if you want to buy every game, it costs, right? But I do like the I do love when that game from the dead comes and just like reveals itself as like, we're back after 10 years. You know, that kind of stuff I'm grateful for. Like, if it's not an IP I don't care for, I respect and I'm great. I'm happy for those people who like this old IP that comes back. You know, it's like the Switch especially has been like that. You know, for me, Tamagotchi Life, any kind of me game in general, I really wish to come back. That it's just me focused, not Switch Sports. I'm sorry, Switch Sports was not it, Nintendo. I really wish Switch Sports was good, but it missed the mark. Like and not even in the Wii Sports Resort way of getting like the secret targets. And whether or not they could have, updated it and fixed their game is one thing. Because I feel like if they eventually kept, it was like the whole Nintendo sports thing where it was kind of, they just didn't update it. So it was adding like, added salt to the wound. The salt to the wound was very, sad, because Nintendo Switch Sports, I feel like, a lot of them, so Nintendo Switch Sports compared to like the Mario Golf and the other sports games, had potential because they could have clearly added more to the game that would made it more like with Wii Sports Resort or even Wii Sports Club. It had something to go for it. But I feel like the initial regret of showing Sportsmate might have just killed the game if it already wasn't killed before it was revealed. It's like it was very unfortunate, but I'm just nostalgic for the Wii series stuff. Heck, I have a questionable addiction to modding Wii music. If you guys don't know, that's a game from Nintendo's 2008 Wii lineup. The one that's from E3, yeah. I'm talking myself, so don't worry about that. But yeah, nostalgia, okay? So let's just say that. I do it for the bit, and I'm the nostalgia. But, my point is, I don't even expect that to ever come back, though. That's what I mean. If they acknowledge it, that's something. If they acknowledge the Wii music is ever coming back, it's something. So I expect the only way that would even come back would be like some Wii virtual console. If they had to bring all the Wii series games back, they would have to acknowledge that. And probably Wii Chess. But Wii Chess never had a North American release. They could probably get away with that one. By the time, and that's Wii, we're not gonna be in the same. We're not even gonna be in the Switch era anymore. I feel like though. They're gonna have to have some kind of gimmick for that. Or not even a gimmick. The Switch isn't meant for that. But I'm just rambling. My apologies. As I say, it's like, I'm just kind of taking things one thing at a time. No. I died. Hold on, chat. I'm back. Don't worry. I'm not gonna press on impact just yet. Let's do this. Oh, this course is hell, isn't it? Oh no, I'm gonna die. 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 Get out of here. Get out of here. Oh my god, how did I live? How did I live? That's a clutch. Ooh, that was ooh. Alright. Why are there so many mirror courses? Why? Why, right? $2:55 in the morning. No! Oh my gosh. Why? Alright. I'm waiting for the Grand Prix, to be honest. I can just. Alright. Hmm. Oh boy, I forgot that. I forgot I have that. I mean, I knew it was there, but I got the implications of because knowing that if they don't here's it's a particular reward here that does something. The free one channel point redemption though. I never had timeout. Usually the streams don't go that long, and more, and that's just it's a jokey in general thing. But if you redeem it today, you're gonna get timed out for like 5 hours, 5-6 hours. It's like I don't think you should do that. But just other than that, there would be a whole thing with it if that happened. So I want to remind any new viewers or viewers that are lurking, that that thing does exist. Oh yeah. See, I'm trying. I don't know. I'm thinking. Right now. I'm surprised there's a lot of people still here. Like, there's a decent amount of people. Though, I'm wondering how many of these people are actually just playing, waiting on a Nintendo Direct just like me. That'd be kind of ironic. But good for them. Like, it's just like, for so long, but it's kind of like, the hype's there, so we're just gonna vibe. Good for them. Good for us. Good for the Tamagotchi Life fan club here. I'm giving myself false hope, and I'm okay by that. I didn't mention this, but 5 more followers. I mean, it's been like that for a while since stuff there. 5 more followers to 1,000 if anyone's here. That's not following. That's something planned for that, but we'll take it by ear. Alright, guys. Some F's and zeros. That sounds so wrong for perfection. Sorry about that. Alright. Oh, no, not the wind. Not Death Wind. Oh my gosh. All my homies say Death Wind. It's like Death and Wind. For real, when I started playing this game, I've seen so many crashes. People probably know this game most for the condition. I hate that bit. I got reminded of that. So I found out about a remix of SNES Rainbow Road and how that Rainbow Road would fit this game so well. For that, for how many people that would crash. That's kind of one of my there's certain tiers of like the prediction stuff. Some it actually like it could happen, and then but it's unlikely, and then and then there's F099 Rainbow Road DLC that I have also on my list. Like I don't think I'm not expecting it, but how I would react to certain things. I suppose Nintendo, if you somehow are, if Miyamoto here is watching me, you're my only viewer, Miyamoto, or something. Just that I want to mention that, But that guy just ran into me. Oh, he tried so hard. Like me, I'm keep bouncing. The step went right next to it. I'm surprised I'm not as bad as I was. I guess it's game is better on Switch, and I think Super Mario Kart I like it used to. It's more or less making sure. I'm really I don't know how it's so good. I guess I used to be into Mario Kart Wii a lot back. So maybe just I got the moves. It's gonna think of a really bad joke there, but yeah, I can't think of anything. I'll be honest, there's certain things like this with Super Mario Kart that I would love for a game. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. I really don't know what they're gonna do. A lot of small. I feel like they have the opportunity though, but for a lot of unusual Nintendo like things. Like a new 99 game, maybe Super Mario Kart 99 actually will happen, or a new Zero 99 content. Now they have a lot of potential here, especially where they are in the they're the best thing company in Japan still. It's like, and they specifically said all this stuff won't be on the Switch 2, right? Or it won't be the Switch. This direct won't be the Switch 2 at all. They won't acknowledge it. Likely. So yeah, this is their little playground for the last hurrah for Switch 1. It's like I definitely could see stuff like that, or Tamahashi Life. There's stuff like that I could see. That's my stuff. I love the casual, quirky stuff from Nintendo. That's my that's my bread and butter. The Wii era is my bread and butter, though. The DS games that aren't meant to be on the DS was my bread and butter back in the day. Yeah, that's like I'm nostalgic. It's like I feel old half the time when people don't even know what the Wii was. If you don't know the Wii in here now, just tell me. I claim my love for a certain Wii game that no one seems to really understand how it's just a bit and or if I'm actually saying or not. Wii music, but yeah. Woo! That's what we're talking about. Woo! B. No, I was gonna make a joke there, but I try to not swear, but I just don't think my joke was really. I don't think when I should be saying it right this second, man. I'm not even thinking. I'm done. I don't want to ruin it. Alright, I don't want to jinx my. Anyways. But let's focus. Maybe we'll get. Maybe I win actually, or maybe I just. I get. I think as long as I focus. No, I'm sure as heck gonna. We're gonna get try for better. I don't think I've played this one. At least if I haven't, I mean I haven't played it after 099. I might have. I would have had. I played this at one point. I don't remember this so much. So that's why I'm a little more unfamiliar with this one. No! Mike! I didn't know that I did that, okay guys? But before you even, before someone randomly talked saying, making fun of me. I didn't know that did that. I didn't know it just instant kill if you fell into that. I mean, at least I did hear a non-fire field, and I never heard of fire field in my life, but it looks like a great place to live in right now. It looks like a great place to, settle down, have a family, have some kids. Fire field. Also sounds like a Fortnite game, but this was the 90s. I don't know what I was saying anymore. I don't know what I was saying. I don't know. Instead, I'm gonna go to Mario Kart because, yeah, now let's be honest, I'll probably get more people there. And if you're here from the people who have no one else to go see with my F-Zero, thanks for coming in if you don't really care for me other than that. Understandable, having a great day. I'll be here. Might go back to F-Zero if there's people to play private games with, but admittedly, I know, I understand completely. It's unplanned time, impromptu stream, and you're watching some random guy that you never met on Twitch. I've been out here for so long, I really play. But welcome in. Understandable. Yeah, I'm vibing. I'm vibing. Yeah, I'm just some random guy on the internet. I'm checking something. Okay, that's kind of funny. I see some kind of PPS stream going on Mario Kart. And it's supposed to come live in 2 days. It's kind of weird, don't you think? I mean, I've seen weirder people stream under weirder categories, but I think that's a bit ironic. I guess that they look like a PBS kind of radio station, though. It's funny. But yeah, if you're here, welcome in. I just moved from F-Zero 99, and today it's a very unusual stream for me. I usually don't stream this late, though I have done it once or twice in my times. I don't know how. I don't really know how long. But usually I stream in the afternoon, which is currently at 3:18 in the morning. I've been streaming for about an hour. I usually don't go, long on these streams. Though, not even that. I don't usually stream now. So I stream for like 2 hours max every stream. But I've been, not able to stream as much. But today's stream isn't because of that. It's because it's Nintendo Direct later. And I'm gonna just be here doing stuff until the Direct happens. Because I will rather stay up than sleep and miss it. Apparently, that's apparently my mindset right now. So yeah, thanks for coming in though. Well, I'll be willing to do stuff. I'll be in that kind of stuff. You can join me if you want. But I'm just hanging out. There's a chance, the plan is likely going to be reacting to the direct, though. I'm not sure if I'm going to fully, I'll be honest. There's a chance I might just raid someone and watch with them. It's like I have a couple people. But, I might, and who knows. But I'm back. It's like, let's do in like 3-4 hours. 3, 4, no, it's actually 4 or 5 hours. And I was like, and I don't even know how late I'm gonna go. I want to go till then, but I admit, I'm not, I don't know if I can actually, I don't want to fall asleep on stream either, that's happened. Not recently, but I can see that stuff happening. Mm. I got that one. I'm not sure if it's always been purple. That's weird. I see people like my ex post relating to Miyamoto. Whenever Miyamoto, I'll show you this image in a minute. Actually, I guess I'll show you. I see you are hoping for Tomodachi. I am hoping for you, chat. and I am not expecting anything at the same time. But here I'll show you this image in a minute. But there's this one image that I didn't. I'm over into X. I don't really promote it because it's not really related, and I don't really, I don't get that much. I'm asking for bad attention if that happens. But in X and somewhat in Discord. So Discord's for multiple things. I make random memes and edits in certain Discords and mainly in X that aren't, they're more just ship posts where I put up when the time's right. But when I do that, mixed results, I just do it for the funny. I discuss random stuff that I wouldn't have any. But the direct got announced. But also before the direct, Miyamoto pretty much outright confirmed it. I don't know if it's been a thing. I think he said the year, but never. The year was confirmed, but not the date. But Miyamoto went and confirmed that the Mario movie 2's date is in I don't remember. It was like April 2026 in America and Japan. So I thought it was hilarious because whenever Miyamoto says, "This is Miyamoto," the world just stops turning and looks at him. I mean, Miyamoto deserves it, but I can't help but joke about it. Like there's and one of the people I've been following on, me and this one person that, there's a couple of people on X and Discord that we just have a little meme library. That's right. They put the Dr. Eggman's announcement, which if you don't know has relevance being dubbed by Snapcube, and Shadows up, kind of make announce it. I edited the image I posted with Miyamoto instead of Eggman, so it's like, this is Miyamoto. I have come make an announcement. It's pretty much what that is. That's ironic, but I thought that was funny. Apparently, that's like the only thing I get pinged for is like people liking that stuff, like Vogue. It's funny though, but it's a passion, not a stance. But oh boy, what a time to be a Nintendo fan, hey? Been a fan since the Wii days. I was a little kid back then. Why am I acting like I'm from a different country? I'm not. Here, let me put this little image up. I don't know what I'm saying. I think I'm losing my sanity with that kind of night, I guess. Let me here, if you guys are curious, this was the image. Yeah, that's the image. Yep. So if you guys are curious, that's the image. I don't know how to say that really. But yeah, if you want to leave them, I'm sorry, but yeah. Understandable, quirky, casual, insomnia. I feel these people lose. Oh, come on, dude. Why you gotta ruin the Shroom Rich gang? Oh, Shroom Head. Yeah, Shroom Head. Oh, God, but don't be an idiot. You can't tell me what to do. I can tell you, you're gonna lose inspiration with that attitude. For that. Oh, brother, this guy stinks! Oh. I should have asked. Well, anyway, looks like I'm not the only American in here, which is good for you two. Good for fellow Americans being in my boat. I wonder if they're streaming. That'd be kind of ironic. There's apparently some, there's a couple of affiliates here. I wonder if they're here for the same reason. No, I don't. No, one of them streams it, Sean. And then there's just the bottom one. Like, I don't know if they were intentionally doing this or they streamed it for under Mario Kart. But the bottom, there's always it's not one thing if someone intentionally just does it because they don't care, or if there's a troll. But this person is the channel is called the Waycross Public Media, which means the icon is the PBS one, meaning they're probably not a legit organization. But the idea that they did this and it starts the stream channel last to the 20th. Whether or not this is real or not, it does think it's a little bit funny. I like that. Right? It's like, yeah. Huh. Hmm. I'm not going to go to bed just yet. But part of me feels like I might lie to myself and raid someone. I don't know when, but like I said, I might not be able to make it fully streaming. see. Yeah, I might up in there now. I'm probably gonna be up still. That's the deal. I might as well just stream still, but I don't know. Yeah, this was chill. It was nice to stream in dinner, right? But we'll figure it out. I don't know. I might do other stuff, work on some stuff. This stream, and a couple races. So we'll figure it out, you know. But regardless of what happens, I'll be watching the debate. It's 99% sure, and I mean, I will be in the Beta 64 Twitch channel, watching the direct debate when the direct happens, even if I'm half asleep or not. That's my plan right now. It's to stream, to watch it with them. So if you guys are interested in hanging out with me, that's where I'll be. Also, if you're in my Discord and all that, I'll be discussing. I'll be, it's gonna be in live time with people who will talk about it. But yeah. But it was nice for the few people that showed up, like Hoops if you're sure or not. I was going to continue, but more or less, regardless, this was a nice to stream to at least stay on my live still and work on stuff. I might stream later to discuss it. I might even react to it, but I doubt I'm gonna be reacting to it live, right, at the moment. We'll figure it out, you know? I might even just go and watch something else. Like, I'm not saying watch something else, but like, I might enter like my, I don't know. We'll figure it out through this way. So, I'm just vibing. More or less, yeah. I'm losing my sleep. I usually have bad sleep, but I don't know. But I might stream later too. I might take a little break and come back. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. There's no plan to the stream. So I might try going back on a couple hours closer to the direct. No matter what I'm gonna do, I'm probably either gonna watch with you guys with our raid beta. There's other people that are streaming it too, which I recommend on like the Milk Finishers and a lot, every other Nintendo YouTuber out there that I follow. But those two, Milky Finishers and Beta 60 are the ones I recommend usually. The beta for Nintendo Directs. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna raid this guy called Jason Bowie. Seems like he's playing Mario Kart, so I'm probably gonna be joining him and we'll hang out in there. The plan is for me to I might though it does follow, you got pinged. Or you'll see in the Discord. I'm pretty sure when joining in, I know I said I was gonna stream later, but honestly this was an unplanned stream and when I hope the direct is up to our hopes and standards and hopes and dreams and don't get crushed as I expect. Tell me what you like. Hopefully, probably not. But please, I want to fake. I want to lie to myself and hope. All right, I want to raid and we'll go from there. I know I'm probably the only one, but I appreciate everyone joining in and all that. See ya. Hope